Hello, everyone, and welcome to Creator Toolbox, a show brought to you by the ServiceNow Developer Program, where we will demo all the newest ServiceNow features for every developer's toolbox. In the top, we don't actually have this.
I'm getting it.
Usually, there we go.
Oh, that's Vancouver, right?
Oh, Christ. We're off to the races on this day. Usually in one of the corners, there we go, we have an indicator of which version of software we will be covering today, which of course, we are at the very tail end of our Washington release cycle. Now, a little April Fool's Day prank. Usually, obviously, we have Creator Toolbox on Tuesday. Today's Monday. Woo! So you get a little surprise. If you'd like to see the full content calendar as well as everything that we've produced up until this point, which is actually the vast majority of what we will be producing for Washington, please go to devlink.sn/Washington, D.C. or just Washington. Both of them work. Today, we are covering something not just new, but an entirely new feature that is for Washington. Technically, it's not out yet. So consider this still a safe harbor. Consider this a sneak peek of something that is to come. Before we do that, let's go ahead and do some quick introductions. My name is Lauren McManaman. I am one of our team's senior developer advocates, and I will pass it off to the man in green next to me, Chuck Tomasi.
Hi, Chuck Tomasi, senior developer advocate at ServiceNow. Been with the company since 2010.
Nice. And I'm Kieran McMorrow. I'm a principal product manager with our Creator Workflows app engine. I've been here at ServiceNow for about 2.5 years, and I've been in the wider ServiceNow ecosystem for nearing 10 years.
Dang, that is a huge, huge storied history on both of y'all. I'm feeling a little underprepared history-wise. But Kieran is on the show to showcase what it's a little bit of a hard tongue twister this morning, Creator Studio on Creator Toolbox, Creator Studio being the new feature. So without any further ado, let's jump straight into, well, at least cover first, what is Creator Studio?
Sure. Creator Studio is really a new entry point into application development for kind of the App Engine product catalog. It's not really a replacement for any of our existing tooling, but it's really a very guided, prescriptive environment that allows, I would say, line of business experts to create workflows of their own that are natively compliant with ServiceNow application development, and really allows your traditional admin developer teams to have confidence that the development will be deployable, it'll be scalable, and will only occur within the bounds that are set. And so typically what I do is I'm going to step through a deck that I'm used to using, and part of it is the safe harbor. Please don't make any purchasing decisions based on this. It is forward-looking. I would say that the forward-looking is only a little bit. We are looking at the May Store 2 release, which is going to be May 9th.
So during Knowledge.
So right after Knowledge, we are going to be releasing Creator Studio. And so I would say, hey, keep a lookout on the floor at K24. You are going to see quite the representation of Creator Studio, lots of shout outs, and there is going to be opportunity to kind of get your hands and play around potentially. So look for the Creator Studio section at Knowledge 24. So typically what I would say is that the opportunity for citizen development, this is something that everybody who is at a stage of application development, organizations, they're aware of it. The opportunity for citizen development is huge. Gartner, they've been predicting for years that citizen development need vastly outstrips the capability for most traditional developers to deliver it. They're also predicting that 80% of all developers will be citizen developers by 2026. And we see that as organizations implement citizen development, they see significant acceleration in their ability to deliver mission-critical applications, as well as reducing the backlog from your traditional development teams. That's one of the huge pieces right there that we're always trying to mention around, is that often what happens with traditional development teams is as you intake a lot of these requests, kind of basic requests, say catalog item building, those tend to fill up a backlog. But what happens as citizen development really scales up, organizations are able to kind of offload some of these tasks onto the process experts that really understand those processes. And then the development teams can focus on those mission critical applications that really start pushing the ball forward on hyper automation. So what I'll do is I'll just level set a little bit. Some of the perceptions around our existing tooling, specifically App Engine Studio, has traditionally been it's too hard for beginners. That as a citizen developer, as somebody who doesn't think like a developer, often it doesn't walk you through all the steps in this level of granularity that you need. So some of the perceptions, it's a little too difficult. For our traditional developers, often it's seen as a little too guided, a little too on the rails, a little too prescriptive in how it recommends development. And often organizations say, hey, we're not ready to start doing citizen development, so we don't want to think about some of the quote unquote low code tools that ServiceNow offers because we're not looking to spread the net. So around 2 years ago, as a business unit, we came together and had a discussion, and we said, all right, we understand that there are some public perceptions of this tooling. So we need to come up with a new strategy. Yeah, did you have a question, Lauren?
No, that was just my dog barking. I apologize.
Okay.
I was coming off mute though, because I did want to ask, because I really like the look and feel of this slide, but I do feel like it is a little bit of a miscommunication, because I think that's for App Engine Studio, go back to the other one. So App Engine Studio, is not going away. I really want to communicate that, because I personally use App Engine Studio for everything. So I want to quell any fears, or go forward, please, to one more slide.
Oh,
that one. Yes.
Okay.
So Creator Studio. So we encountered this in sales a lot, right?
Yeah.
People say two things sometimes when they talk about citizen developers. On one hand, and I think Chuck would agree with me on this, people mean people in the business that want to become developers, right? People that have no technical experience, but ideally would maybe love to have those skills. That's one type. The other type are people that are on the business side that want some of their things automated, but really don't have a desire to learn, or it's not part of their career track to learn developer concepts. So like, they don't need to learn about object orientation. They don't need to learn about data structures and things like that. They don't need to learn about, per se, like the ins and outs. I would say that App Engine Studio is still the tool for teaching someone that doesn't have a lot of technical experience the first steps to becoming maybe a developer, whereas Creator Studio is targeting that second type, right? Of like, we have all these things in our business, they could easily be automated. The backlog for everything else is so long. Let's just do it ourselves. Is that correct?
1,000%. And that's one of the big things too. I think there's a slide that I wanted to include here that I forgot to add, but App Engine Studio is still the premier application development experience that we provide on the platform. It's not going away anytime soon. But Creator Studio and ServiceNow Studio that will be coming later in Xanadu, these are new experiences that are meant to kind of answer to specific personas. I think App Engine Studio is amazingly powerful. There's so much stuff that you can do with it. But we're trying to create new entry points that serve towards a particular persona, a particular method of development. I find that App Engine Studio is the tool that I end up reaching out for because it allows me to kind of bootstrap a lot of these capabilities. But so, yeah, to your point, Lauren, neither of these tools is a replacement for App Engine Studio. For Creator Studio, really what it's meant is, so part of the narrative is that progressive skill-based experiences that you kind of mentioned. Often what happens is you have citizen development and you're looking to really kind of step up and really open up your eyes to the world of application development. Creator Studio is going to be that premier kind of entry point into application development that really walks you through a lot of the pieces of application development. And potentially that might be the upper limit of what you want to do with it. But if you start creating experiences using Creator Studio and you say, hey, I would love to learn more about this, at that point, you can leverage some of our learning that we have on Now Learning. You can potentially start getting access to App Engine Studio and really start understanding a data model, how to really configure kind of some of more of the advanced capabilities. And potentially later on, if you do become a traditional developer and really want to seek out when ServiceNow Studio comes out, that might be another entry point for you as well in that kind of skill-based progression. But what Creator Studio is, and that's what I'll talk about, It really allows those non-developers to build the most common types of apps on the Now platform. I think we're all aware the vast majority of the IT backlog comes from request-based applications. Kind of tends to be relatively simple request-based fulfill experiences. And so this is really going to help you create a very simplified, streamlined application that solves for those use cases. And as I said, it is really based around that request fulfill application creation. And request fulfill, why are we doing that? Because it is the core competency that we tend to have with a lot of these requests. It is that main source of the IT backlog. And often for our customers, and we've been doing a lot of interviews around Creator Studio. We've been getting this in front of a lot of our existing customers across the board of application development proficiency, where they're at in their maturity journey. And often what we're walking through is, hey, one of the primary use cases that you can use for this is offloading your catalog item maintenance, your catalog item building for Creator Studio. And this allows an entry point where organizations can create those kind of relatively simple applications encapsulated in a scope and be able to deploy that and have everything in a relatively streamlined manner. So that's the reason why we're doing request fulfill use cases with Creator Studio.
Kenny, we got a question from the chat. Is Studio, the Dev Studio that we've got, becoming ServiceNow Studio, or will ServiceNow Studio be its own standalone? We mentioned AES is not going away. What's happening with the Studio that we've had for the last 8 years?
So the Studio IDE, that's part of the platform. I don't necessarily have any vision into where its current application, where it is in the application lifecycle. I know that it's going to be baked in for the next couple of years. I think there's a couple of different application development experiences that are going to be coming. Specifically, I can talk around Creator Studio, App Engine Studio, and what will be the ServiceNow Studio. But I think as we get towards Xanadu, you'll start getting more clarity on what those paths are for kind of the traditional tooling like the ServiceNow Studio.
Take a shot every time someone says studio today. Yeah. You might pass if that's the case.
I swear it's coffee in here. I've only had one cup. Too early in the morning for whiskey.
And this is a technical audience, so I want to make the differentiation and clarify when you say offloading many of those catalog items. When my mind hears catalog items, I'm thinking request item, task, the SC underscore tables. This is not that. This is record producer and table. So if you're licensing by tables, work with your account team to understand, what does this bring to your licensing scheme? Yes, record producers show up in the catalog, but you have to listen closely when somebody says you're maintaining catalog items. Technically, the record producer is extended from the SC cat item table. So not going to get into all that, but it's a technical audience. So I thought I'd at least bring it up that there's a differentiation between catalog items, as many people think of it, versus record producers. They end up in the same place. They're exposed to the end user, but they have a different underpinning.
I appreciate you bringing that up, Chuck. I mean, and that's one of the big things too about Creator Studio. That's a conversation topic that I tend to get to at the end, but the architecture of Creator Studio is slightly different than traditional application building. One of the impediments often for starting out citizen development is having to guide a non-developer or a line of business expert to start thinking about an application development. And the data model, sometimes that gets a little bit difficult. What Creator Studio does, as you mentioned, is relies on record producers. And so essentially what that allows us to do is, as somebody requests access to Creator Studio, in the scenario, you can have Becky. She's an HR lead. She requests access to Creator Studio. She's provisioned access. There are two roles that ship with Creator Studio. There's a limited and then there's a full role. So Becky gets granted that full Creator Studio role. She can then create an application. What that's going to do is create a scope, and it's going to allow her to create multiple forms within that singular scope. So potentially, if you wanted to have maintain or create catalog items for your group, you could have that catalog item be one form inside that scope. As you add more forms, it's going to add more questions or fields to that form or that underlying table. But it allows you to kind of have a little bit more transparency in your table allocations, what tables you're building out. And it allows you a little bit more latitude for potentially allowing multiple users in your group. You could provision them that limited access role, and they can maintain these items. So they're not necessarily spinning up new scopes. They're not creating new tables. It's going to be relatively encapsulated. And that allows, I would say, more latitude as an admin team, as a development team, to understand licensing implications, tables that are being built out.
Well, so also by separate or not using the SC request tables and using your own discrete scope and tables, you can then build flows on top of that to help automate the process. You can, it is a true app. It's just being started in a very contained space, as you said. But there's no reason somebody else couldn't come along later in AES or the ServiceNow Studio, like you said, take a drink, and build upon that.
So that's one of the big things too. Any application that's created inside Creator Studio is not orphaned inside of Creator Studio.
Right.
So there is a portion that I'll get to in a little bit where we talk about those automations. If you potentially wanted to add an integration that's not going to be available via Creator Studio, this is a great tool to really start thinking about application development in terms of fusion teams. You have the initial line of business team that's going to create their workflow. They reach an upper limit of capability that they can add on their own. At that point, they can engage with your traditional dev team and have them add that other layer potentially of integration, and then can continue to work on that application via Creator Studio. But as you mentioned, it's not orphaned inside Creator Studio. So Creator Studio, I'll blast through this quick. We do have a kind of a live, I wouldn't say a live demo, but it's a PowerPoint demo that I'll go through. But as I said, Creator Studio, it offers really that simple request form creation with kind of drag and drop, able to add in a curated set of form components and elements and configure it, the metadata for each of those form areas. You can also add simplified automations, and this is going to be a curated set of automations based on Process Automation Designer. And also you'll have a pre-configured fulfiller experience. You can go through and you can modify fields that will display in the list view and the form view. And you can also preview how those are going to look inside of multiple experiences on the Now platform, the portal, Now mobile, if you have virtual agent configured, and also see how those look. And as I said, you can also configure the form, which fields are going to display when fulfillers log in. And you also have the one thing that's really great about Creator Studio is no matter how you're currently deploying your applications, Creator Studio can be a new entry point for leveraging pipelines, for exploring how pipelines are going to work, and using App Engine Management Center to deal with your deployments. So often one of the scenarios is, hey, our company is currently using update sets for deployment. It's like, hey, that's great. If you want to start exploring how pipelines work, let's start using Creator Studio. You can have configure a pipeline specifically for your Creator Studio development and really start exploring how that would work and fit inside. And once you start seeing how quickly and easy and repeatable that deployment is, potentially start using that for other of your deployment. So before I hop into the demo, any questions or comments? Love to hear anything, because I know I tend to talk and go quick. So
we're doing good.
Sounds good. So when a user requests access to Creator Studio and they're provision that access, and this is one point, for the Maestore 2 release, we are not shipping with an out-of-the-box intake for Creator Studio because we really want to understand organizations that they can create their own intake procedure. If you want to create a catalog item to request access to Creator Studio, great. If you want to kind of go with an ad hoc process, I think you will see an intake process ship natively with it in later iterations. But right now, that is going to be contingent on your organization so that it fits into your application development. Once somebody is provisioned access, and as I mentioned, those two roles, if they have the full set of access, they're going to come here and they're going to have the ability to be able to create a new app. They'll also see other apps that potentially they could request access to. You can also select the tab and see if you have any apps that you've created or have been shared with you. If you decide to create an app, and this would be contingent on having that full access, you can come in and you can add in whatever name that you want. You can add a description. And if you select advanced settings, you'd be able to see the scope name. So it will provide a default scope name, but you can also add and modify that. So one of the great things about Creator Studio is that you are going to be given a default template that you can work with. That default template is going to have a set of fields on there that you can begin with. But as an admin group, this is one thing that's really powerful. If you wanted to, you could create your own set of templates and have those provisioned to a particular set of users. So if you have a default set of fields that you want to have provisioned to that particular group, they might have that template show up here as well. But the default template is great. It really gives you a sense of kind of the first pieces that you would need to get started. So when you apply that template, then you have the ability to select which catalog you want that application to display within. And you can pick multiple ones. You can pick multiple categories to have that display in. One question asked is if topics are currently supported. There won't be in the initial Maestore 2 release, but when we move forward towards Xanadu, you will, I think that is a piece that's on the roadmap. So as I mentioned, you also will have the ability to then preview the experiences that your application is going to display within. So natively, as you create your application with inside Creator Studio, these are pieces that are going to be bootstrapped as part of that creation process. You don't have to take additional steps for these to be configured. So you can see potentially how it would show in Portal in Now Mobile. If you have virtual agent configured in your instance, then it would display how it might look in that virtual agent. You can see the fulfiller view for the list and as well as the record. So once you click edit, you're taken into the primary Creator Studio interface. And this is where it's going to load up those default form components. And you can click in to one of these areas and it will allow you to configure any of the question details, the content types. As I said, this is kind of a curated set of those content types, but it is really powerful because you can build some really great apps with those that are available here. Once you've added the form components and you've set field values, you can then move forward towards automations. And this is, I think, really one of the most powerful pieces of Creator Studio. You can, as part of that architecture, you can select which form you want to add that automation to. So because we're working on the headshot request, we're going to say that when the form is submitted, we want to fire off a automation. And here is where those line of business process experts can really realize their own process expertise. I think often one thing as a developer or as an IT team that takes a lot of pieces is a lot of cycles is the back and forth conversation of discovery, of really trying to get people to understand the questions you need answered to be able to help them realize the logic. But by providing Creator Studio and putting this tool in the hands of that process expert, they can really visualize and walk through their process end to end and add in the different pieces. So there are that curated set of components from Process Automation Designer. So if you want to add an approval, if you want to create a task, and one thing too, you can also add placeholder activities. So if you identify, hey, at this point, I want to reach out to Calendly, you can create that placeholder and say, I want to have this here, and then you can communicate with your development team and say, hey, this is a piece that we want to add. Is this something that you can do? But this way, they're 99% of the way there with the application, with the logic, and with the flow. They can add that piece, and you can move forward with your application development. So there is also the ability to see it via the board view, but I think the diagram view is really the cool part.
May I take a quick pause to ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
So for Creator Studio, so far, basically, we create a table, we create forms to create requests for said, like requested items for said table.
Mhm.
We can automate things. What type of governance advice do you have, or things that are baked in to this designer? Because one of the like implicit assumptions you have to kind of make with like new developers, like sometimes they don't know a best practice is to use the same table or is to use the same scope.
Mhm.
That's the other question I had too, is are these all independent scopes as well? If it's a I don't know if they're called projects or from that home page, but let's say project for this lack of a
Mhm.
better word, is that creating its own scope as well?
So when you create a net new application via Creator Studio, that's when you're going to have a singular scope.
Okay.
You can add multiple forms within that scope, but typically, I think the process, as I mentioned, you might have a lead developer on a team or a lead
Mhm.
process owner. They would be the one that I would potentially probably provide the full access to determine, hey, this workflow necessitates a brand new table or a brand new application. Often, I think those applications are going to be relatively similar, so most of them can sit within the same. But yeah, I think the scenario for the most part, most of the users, I would probably provision them with the limited access scope or limited access role, which would allow them to work on any applications that have been
But
assigned to
not
them,
make them.
but
Okay.
they can't necessarily create any net new applications. Um,
Gotcha.
yeah, so that at least allows you to provide, any best practice governance, how it applies at your organization,
Mhm.
and also allows you to kind of avoid that application sprawl and potentially somebody
Yeah.
who's maybe creating an application that they don't understand. Maybe it doesn't fit in, or we already have something that replicates that capability.
Yes. And then I apologize, Karen. I popped up your message earlier because I thought that was the question he was answering. I'm sorry to kind of come back to it. Does this just come with part of the platform, or or is it a plugin that needs to be installed? I will say it's not out yet, Karen, but when it is made available in late May, what do
Mhm.
you think will be the situation?
Yeah, so it's going to need to be installed from the store. It's not going to be as part of the family release, but it is part of the App Engine Enterprise SKU. So it is going to be a
Okay.
premium capability. So if you currently have App Engine Enterprise, this will be accessible to you at that time to install.
Awesome.
Karen,
Thank you.
another technical question, because that's
Sure.
just who I am. Many of these requests appear to be task related.
Hmm.
Are these tables that we're creating extended from task?
Yes, they will be extended from task.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that should save us some time in creating assigned to, assignment group, priority, urgency, all those fields that tasks have in common, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the important things too, and that's one of the reasons why we're trying to get this in the hands of customers and get eyes on it, because we really want people to understand the full set of capabilities and really start realizing their own processes in there, and really kind of open our eyes about use cases around here. I feel really strongly about this because you can genuinely create an application that would have taken multiple days, if not weeks, in minutes, and really realize immediate value using Creator Studio. It's been amazing that the chance that I've had to play with it, because I think as a developer, you have to think about a lot of these considerations. And this really allows you to rapidly start that process in a way that is compliant. You don't necessarily have to think about a lot of these considerations from the same level of granularity and concern. The last part of the application design process is going to be going through the form submission. So potentially you might want to create multiple filtered lists depending on those fillers that are going to be fulfilling this process. So you can add different columns, you can add lists for particular users, and you can also configure the form view. So if you have fields that you've intake during the intake process that you want to display here, this is where you can kind of go through and add those in dependent on whatever criteria that you have. And once you've actually gone through that process, you can click the preview button on the top right, and that'll allow you to actually see the live fields and live data that you've set. So you can see how it would look again in the portal on Now Mobile if you have virtual agent configured, what that submission would look like with those records and the record view as well. So once you are have previewed it, you can mark that form as ready and submit it for review. Once you submit that, you're going to see what is going to occur for the deployment process. That it's going to enter a pipeline, that it's going to be reviewed, and your admin will ultimately approve it or not. And because this is a singular scope, you will see the forms that are associated with that scope. But you are going to choose which of those forms you're going to be submitting, so that nothing that somebody else is working on potentially is going to go live. Only what you have selected and the pieces that you're submitting to your admin. And let's go through. After this, you're going to see the full set of data that you're going to be submitting, any forms, any processes, and the version that you're currently on. And that's when you would submit that. The thing that's great about this, and the big piece about governance, is that nothing is going to go into production unless your admin approves it. So you don't necessarily have to worry about there being any applications that are going to go to deployment half-baked. As an admin team, as a development team, you have ultimate visibility into what is being developed, by whom. You have the ability to validate and see applications that are submitted to you, and then you can take action against them. So Creator Studio would be run in a subprod environment. And as that admin, you would have the ability to see those requests and approve them before they go into the pipeline and move up towards your production environments. So then you would be able to see, once it's been approved, that your request would display within the catalog category that you selected. And you would have the ability to go in and see that request and see live the details from the request that you put in. So that is pretty much the kit and caboodle of Creator Studio. We did it in about 30 minutes. So I would love to know if anybody has any questions, and I'll do my best to answer them.
Very exciting. Thank you so much for showing us this morning. That's really, really cool to see where the platform is going, kind of continuously opening the gate towards different types of people that want to start their development journeys. It's very exciting. Prior to it coming out, because there still is some time, is there any, like if someone's in the audience and thinking, man, I'd really like to try this out, is there any education that they should seek prior to help them hit the ground running when it is available?
So we are going to be putting out quite a bit of collateral over the next month and a half before the release. So keep an eye on our the community page. So we are going to be having a Creator Studio community page, product hub, that will be coming up in the next couple of weeks. And that's where we're going to start putting out blog content. We do have a lot of other collateral that we're going to be working on. Just primarily what and when to build with Creator Studio. I think the big piece, as I said, is messaging around that this is not a replacement for any existing tooling. This is just a new intake point. This is really a way to start thinking about application development differently and to lower that bar of citizen development, really make it a lot easier to start taking in applications and really seeing value for your IT and development teams today. So unfortunately, we aren't doing any kind of DPP, so we can't really necessarily get this in people's hands earlier. But I would say keep an eye on the community, keep an eye on blogs. We're going to be putting out a lot of different content for you. And as we move towards release, May 9th, you're going to start seeing more content, because we're going to walk through how to get it set up, how to start developing in there. So yeah, keep an eye on community. That's the number one place.
Okay. Looks like we've got some questions in the chat. The first one is from Dave Borland. In the example, it had the user enter in the name, the email, etc. Does Creator Studio utilize reference in other tables in their questions?
Yep. So you can select the ability. You can select other tables and pull in reference fields. So
perfect.
It's just
also hi Earl. Also, Jeffrey Limonez. I apologize. I probably should have
Jeffrey. We'll just go by first name.
I empathize. McManaman is always mispronounced. Can Creator Studio handle building of new notifications for these new apps? Or would that be something that's relegated to the other studio environments?
So at this point with the May Store 2 release, if you wanted to configure notifications, that would be handled externally. The primary thing around Creator Studio right now is that it is a very encapsulated development environment. It's very prescriptive. The use cases are relatively simplistic. But I would say as we move towards other releases, you will see more capability come in there. But we really want to make sure that I think as developers, all of us, we tend to push the envelope, right? We try to say, how far can I get with this application? We really want to make sure that the use cases are prescriptive. You walk through that simple request fulfill. If you have additional capability, we engage with those that really understand the platform more from a depth-based capacity, and they can add in those other features. So I would say no, not at this point for the May Store 2 release, Jeff.
Question, and this is like a little bit of a challenge I've been giving to like a lot of our PMs that release kind of new products. In just one sentence, what is this for? What is Creator Studio for in one sentence or less?
One sentence? I don't know if you've heard me talk
that's all
for
you
the last
get.
30 minutes. I'm not very good at one sentence.
So essentially, if people walk away with one sound bite, right? Creator Studio blank.
I would say Creator Studio is, I've mentioned multiple times, it's a new intake point for app dev. It lowers the bar.
Perfect.
And it really makes it easy. It really makes it easier to offload from your traditional development folks. That's the big message that I tend to go, because I worked as a developer. I worked as an architect on the platform for a long time. And that's the big thing. Every day we're trying to, how can we be more effective with the tooling that we have? And Creator Studio really does that. It really allows us to take some of these things that tend to fill up the backlog. They're important. They're mission critical pieces, but they fill up our backlog, and it's very difficult for us to kind of let go. Creator Studio allows us to let go. It allows us to say, hey, this development can occur in a safe way, a guardrailed way, and then we can focus on these other pieces. And once that engine starts running, that's the really exciting piece, because then you say, oh my God, wow, we've immediately reduced 30 to 40% of our backlog and offloaded that to the people that know it the best. So that wasn't one sentence. That was a lot. So
you gave me one initially. Yeah, it's all good. Any other questions, Chuck, that I've missed in the chat?
Just a comment from Jeffrey again. Just interested to see how the process would go if you submit something for review or get it in the pipeline, and then something needs changing later. Do you pull that back? Do you augment it? What is that going to look like?
Yeah, and I think we're really hoping to have more community visibility into this as we get towards release. So we will have kind of some more community events. We will also have kind of some partner enablement. We'll be doing some peak session around Creator Studio. So as partners, as those that really want to be ahead of the curve on this, keep an eye, because we really want to make sure that you are adequately prepared for it. The value proposition too is that this doesn't require a lot of training, but we want you to understand how to think about it, how it integrates into current application development, and how it integrates into organizations that are thinking about growing in their app dev and really starting to pull people in. Because I think once people start doing it, they're going to realize, oh, wow, I can really do this. And the keys to the kingdom are not going to be as Loctite, right? I think typically that's the one thing. Nope, we don't want you in here because we don't want you to mess anything up. And this is a way to really allow value and workflows to start, I won't say snowballing, but that's what we want to do. We want to see that grow and see that momentum happen.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kieran, for all this that you've showcased today. A couple of quick reminders for everybody. One, Knowledge is like it's almost like a month away. It's 30, around the corner.
30 something days. It's really quick. 36.
A sickeningly small amount of days for those of us preparing content for Knowledge. Because of this, the agenda builder goes live very soon. Can we say the exact day it actually goes live or no?
I haven't heard the exact day.
Well, because I'm mentioning it, know that it comes out very soon. So what you can do is that some of the content is already available for you to look at and kind of play around with. Check it out on the Knowledge website. You can also see different kind of tentative agendas that we prepared for people looking for certain types of content, for people in certain types of roles. Definitely give that a browse. Pitbull is our musical artist. So even if you're not that interested in knowledge, you might as well come and go to a free Pitbull concert. That should be fun. Also, alternatively, there is still some Washington content coming out at this tail end of our release cycle. So be sure to check out devlink.sn/Washington, DC. Kieran, do you have anything that you'd like to plug today? So if people wanted to bug you with questions, or your team with questions, any place for them to go? Other than this comment section too.
No, not explicitly, but I would say always keep an eye on Creator Studio and keep an eye on the community. We do have, we're kind of retooling a little bit about how App Engine Studio and App Dev is presented on community. So always keep an eye there, because really and truly, that's what we want people to do. We want people to be developing apps on the platform, because this platform really and truly is a transformative platform that allows you to do app dev in a different way, a way that scales. And Creator Studio is really a new entry point for that. You're going to start seeing more tooling that's coming that allows people to create apps, and apps that really answer to what they need to do at the time. So yeah, keep an eye on community, keep an eye on the application development product hub. And yeah, look forward to having everybody at Knowledge. Really, it's going to be a great time.
Awesome.
All right.
With that being said, thank y'all so much, and
Thanks.
we'll see y'all soon.
Thank you guys. Cheers.